Welcome to the Rabbi's Table, a place of dialogue, not debate, a place where we sit down and can show that you can disagree without being disagreeable, that we have the ability to learn from each other, that we really need to listen. A place where we have icons, political icons, social icons, cultural icons, gathering together, just like at any rabbi's table throughout history, to have real discussion, to learn and to grow. And I'm really, really grateful to be so blessed with the guest we have today. I guess we would call him controversial to some people, but Tommy Robinson has done so much work. He's from England. He happens to be here in the States just for a couple of days right now, or here in Los Angeles. He has done so much work. He's been repeatedly considered one of the most influential people in fighting the jihadi movement in Britain. He's the one who exposed the grooming gangs in Great Britain, and we're going to find out more about what those are. He's exposed them. He's fought Islamic extremists. There's a fatwa on his head. There's a price on his head. This is a man with real courage meaning to come from the heart. And he really has great courage. He's served prison time because he was told, don't show this or you're going to be in contempt. And he showed the truth to people. He showed film footage. And so they held him in contempt. That's called courage. That's called standing up for who you are. So even though most media portray him as extreme, as a far-right political figure, this is also a guy who left a conservative organization that he founded himself because it was becoming too conservative. So where does he really stand? Is he really that controversial, or do we need to listen? And is he maybe more like Rabbi Meir Kahane, more like someone we should really hear and listen? So I'm so excited we're going to have Tommy here at the Rabbi's Table so we can have some real dialogue, explore some issues, and have some fun here at the table. If you like what you're seeing and hearing at the Rabbi's Table, I invite you to subscribe and to follow us on any of your podcast mediums, Spotify, iHeart, Apple, whatever it is. You can just follow us. You'll get all the latest information, special information from us, special segments of podcasts. You can also go to pound 250. You can go on your cell phone, dial pound 250. When the recording comes up, say, find my podcast. It will ask you what podcast, say the Rabbi's Table. And from then on, you will always get our podcast, our show, directly to your phone. So I invite you to sit with me, with our guests, with the different icons, and join us by being part of the podcast, part of the group, part of the community at the Rabbi's Table. So we're back here at the Rabbi's Table with Tommy Robinson. Tommy, it is a blessing, and I really mean that. It is a blessing for you to be here, and thank you for everything that you do. A lot of people in America especially don't know you, or they've only heard little bits and pieces. So maybe the best place to start is if you would be kind enough to share with us some of your brief history, where you come from, what you've done. Remembering we are on a timetable because this is also a radio show.
Yeah, cool.
Some sort of brief history of how you got to where you are, who you are, and where you are now.
Yep. Well, you thanked me. I'd like to thank America. I'd like to thank America for the hospitality I've been shown and the love I've been shown since I got to the United States. My name is Tommy Robinson. I was born in 1982, and I was born in a town that is 30 miles north of London called Luton Town. When I was born in 1982, there was one mosque. There's now 45. I have watched as the town, the head office of Al-Mujahideen, who are now a prescribed terrorist organisation, but they never were. They're one of the world's most recognised terrorist organisations. Their head office was in my hometown. My hometown was a launch pad for the 7/7 bomb plot, the fertiliser bomb plot, the limo bomb plot, the Luton Army barrack bomb plot. This
is all from your hometown?
Just from one small town. The Stockholm bomber, another suicide attack. Al-Mamdani, suicide attack in Iraq from my town. ISIS fighter Abu Rahim, who also from my town, died fighting for ISIS. And a family of 12 from my town went to join ISIS. So my town has a population of 200,000 that is now 50% Pakistani Muslim. All of these problems come from my town, which may explain why I have become a vocal voice or become an activist against the Islamisation of Great Britain. I first started in 2004, where I held a demonstration called Ban the Luton Taliban. But what people know me for is from 2009. 2009, we had a soldiers' homecoming parade in the town of Luton for that regiment, which is my local regiment, which is the Royal Anglians. Scott Mummeridge was 26 and he lost his life in a training exercise, and Michael Swain was 19 and he lost his legs. Now, when
I was going to, it was your platoon. You served in the.
I didn't serve. No,
okay.
This is what I mean is my local area's
Got
platoon.
it. Okay.
Yeah? When they come to have the freedom of our town, they were attacked. They were attacked by a large group of jihadists who were members of this terrorist group, which at the time weren't a terrorist group. They weren't prescribed. So many, like now, we'll get onto it, but in the UK now, Hizb ut-Tahrir have just become prescribed. Yeah. Why? Since October 7th. Why now? Why have you not prescribed them for the last 20 years when they've took over every single university campus in our country to radicalise and recruit for jihad? Why have you not prescribed them? You've done it now. Well, Al-Mujahideen were a terrorist organisation. They were openly active, calling for jihad, sending people to fight against our armed forces, radicalising people and radicalising people on university campuses in the town centre, and they were left alone. So 2009 they attacked our soldiers. I'll go quite quickly here because I know the time constraints. I then organised a organisation locally called the United People of Luton, which then developed into an organisation nationally called the English Defence League. Now, this issue that I saw in my hometown on a Tuesday morning when they attacked the soldiers, that was one thing. But you have to understand that throughout my whole life, all I'd seen is the problems that come from Islamic supremacy. My cousin, we'll get onto grooming gangs. My cousin was a victim of these rape gangs. They call them grooming gangs. It's a nice polite word they give them. They're called grooming gangs in the UK. They're called lover boy tactics in Holland. They're called love jihad in India. What we're talking about here is large groups of Muslim men who purposely target non-Muslim girls. They groom them, which is where the word grooming comes from. They treat them quite well at first, and then they manipulate them, and then in the end they gang rape them and they prostitute them. They get them hooked on drugs, and then they become their slaves, and then they are literally tortured, and many of them have been murdered in the UK.
And you see this starting to happen in your hometown.
It happened to my cousin. My cousin was, when I was 13 or 14, my cousin woke up, she was naked and she was being raped by lots of bearded men in the Muslim community with large beards. She ran naked into the street, and I remember, now when people hear these horror stories, the police done nothing. I remember the family meetings over our cousin. I remember her, in the end, she'd climb back out the window to go back to the gangs for heroin. That's what happened in the end, because they had her hooked by the age of 13 or 14 on heroin, dependent on heroin. But these were all weapons. I'd seen all this in my life. I'd seen the inability by the council, the government and the police, not just the inability, but the total two-tier policing, the inability to tackle these gangs, to do anything against them. They literally treated, the non-Muslim community was treated with iron fists and the Muslim community were treated with kid gloves. So I'd watched all these things. Now the Soldiers' Homecoming Parade, I said enough is enough now. Yeah, this group, these terrorists, these jihadists that have took over our town, that everyone is scared of, we need to confront them, we need to challenge them. So we formed a movement of young working class men from the same background as me. I get a lot of condemnation from people in the UK because I wasn't educated a certain way and I wasn't brought up. We have a big class issue in the UK. We have a big class issue. All the politicians are from upper class. All of the journalists are from upper class, and I think many of them see that us working class should just sit down and shut up. But it's us working class who are affected by the impact of mass open border immigration. When you flood our nation with Islam, it's us that they're coming to live with. It's us. It's our daughters that have been targeted.
It's not the country club world.
No,
it's the real world.
It's the real world. And Luton's a real town with a lot of problems. So I was brought up in that town. I'd seen all these problems. I started an organisation called the English Defence League. And we started travelling to different towns and cities to talk about issues that no one was willing to talk about and everyone was scared to talk about. And you have to remember, we've come a long way now. We're 20 years of activism. Back then, people would whisper about Islam. They were scared. And the same's happening here. I see self-censorship. I see the fear. It's a legitimate fear, as you've just, in the prelude to this, you explained. I've had 12, maybe 13 now, official government warnings that there's plans to take my life. Most recently is just 2 weeks before I come to America, I'm on the front cover of ISIS's new magazine that they publish each month, to be killed at all costs. To be killed at all costs because of my opinion, because I've dared to use my speech. I've not been violent. I've dared to use my speech to point out, hold on a minute, this doesn't work, this isn't right, what's happened in my hometown isn't right. So,
and you've done a lot in terms of speech, but you've never gone into personal violence or anything. None of your demonstrations have gone into that place. So in the early days in the English Defence League, the way we find criticism, we were young. There was a lot of young men, and when I left Luton and I started going to other cities, I was inundated with other people in these towns and cities whose daughters and sisters were being kidnapped and taken. Now, I started talking about that very quickly, and I started saying, there's a famous video of me on BBC Newsnight, the biggest political debate show in the UK, and Jeremy Paxman was the fiercest interviewer. And there's a video of me and him 20 years ago, 17 years ago. And what I say to him is, our daughters are being taken from the school gates in every town and city. They're kidnapping them, they're taking them, they're raping them. And he said,
are we supposed to believe this? And he looks at me like I'm lying. And everyone back then treated me like I was spreading fear, spreading hate, and lying.
But you documented with film too, didn't you?
I did in the end. So for 4 or 5 years, we travelled the country as a group of young men going into cities and screaming as a cry for help about what was happening to our daughters. Now, fast forward, we do this from 2009. Fast forward to 2014, and a report comes out showing that 1,400 children in a town called Rotherham had been raped by Muslim gangs. And the report found that the police knew, the council knew, everyone knew it was happening, but they were too scared to do anything.
Why do you think that is? Why are they too scared to? So a grooming gang, for just simply put, is a group of Muslims in England who are raping and enslaving children.
Yep.
Why are they being silent? You pointed out, you saw it, people saw it. Why were they being silent?
Multitude of reasons. So fear. And fear is paralysing. It paralysed our whole country. Fear of being branded racist. What we find, and this is not my opinion, again, it was my opinion in the early days, but now it's factual. It's there. Everyone can see it in government reports, report after report after report. We now have 85 cities that we know these gangs are active in. Every city that has an Islamic community. So, and the police have come out and admitted in the investigations, and the council and the government, that they all knew it was happening, but they were scared of being branded racist. Now, that's one reason. The other reason is the same reason why Britain has just not sided with America with regards to Iran. It's the same reason why Britain and France, all these countries in Europe, Western Europe, are countries of flooding with Islamic immigration. They've recognised Palestine as a state, and they've not stood with our ally against the biggest supremacist funder of terrorism in the world, Iran, because they're scared. They're scared of losing the Muslim vote, because the Muslim vote has become very powerful in the UK, and they're scared of a hostile, violent reaction from the Islamic community. We saw it in 2001 when there were riots in the UK. Since they rioted in Bradford, it went to Oldham, it went to all these different cities.
So if you had two statements, real quick,
Yep.
right? 5 seconds, you have a statement to say to all British politicians. What's the one thing that you say to them?
What's one thing I say to them? Resign right now, everyone here. You're traitors to your people.
And first thing you say, there are British Muslims, there are people who practice Islam who live in Britain, many Pakistani, many that are born in England at this point. 5 seconds, what do you say to them? You've now told the politicians to resign. What do you say to the British Muslims if they were actually going to listen to you?
Stand up, speak out, and enjoy freedom, because none of them have freedom.
That's a good place to take a break for a moment, because it is so important to deal with the freedom. And I really want to explore this grooming gang that you've done. This is amazing work that you've done. So we're going to continue this in just a moment, as we'll talk more about this Rabbi's Table, more about the horrors that are going on in Britain and in the world.
Yep.
One of the greatest places that I know of to go to, whether it's for a day, a week, or even a little longer, is a vacation up in Reno, specifically at the Atlantis Resort and Casino in Reno. It's amazing up there, and it's a little gem of Reno that is often just ignored. I go up there with my family. There's wintertime skiing. There's summertime at the Lake Tahoe. And the Atlantis Resort and Casino is an amazing place to stay. Not only are the rooms beautiful, amazing views, but some of the restaurants are the best restaurants in the country, the Napa Bistro, different places that you can eat. There's an indoor pool. So you can go skiing in the morning and then go swimming in the afternoon. I really want to recommend to you to check out the Atlantis Resort. It's at atlantiscasino.com. That's atlantiscasino.com, Atlantis casino.com. It's up in Reno. I promise you, and I've been there, I promise you, you're going to have an amazing time. You won't be able to wait till you get back. Go visit it. Go see Reno. It's the greatest little city in the world. Go have some fun at the Atlantis. So we're blessed to have you here, Tommy. Tommy Robinson here at the Rabbi's Table. You're just talking about that if you were to talk to British leadership, you would say resign.
Everyone.
And you would say that, you said that people are scared, that there's a fear, which is why they've allowed these grooming gangs to go on. And the horrors that you're describing of these grooming gangs, of these sex gangs. You call it a love jihad. What else did you call it? That they
In Holland, they call it lover boy. In India, they call it love jihad. But in the UK, they call it grooming gang. But I think the audience need to understand the details of what's happening and the scale of what's happening to really get a grip of it. So these gangs have been active now for 50 years in the UK.
Wait, 50 years?
Yep. Yeah, when we went back investigating, and that from when Muslims first come into the UK, and the reason why I bring this warning to America is because this will be happening here. You're not immune. This is happening everywhere where there has an Islamic community, and it's happening. I've just done a detailed presentation at Florida University yesterday to explain why it's happening, because you're not even allowed to ask that question. So let me give you some figures in the UK. Muslim men make up 3% of the UK population. They're responsible for 90% of the convictions of a group of men who rape children. 30% of the men convicted of these crimes are called Mohammed. 30% of men convicted are called Mohammed. Now we can leave. Let's leave the UK. Let's go to Sweden. Sweden has a 6% Muslim population. They're responsible for 63% of the rapes in Sweden. Let's have a look at Germany. Germany has a 4% Muslim population, 54% of the rapes. Germany opened its borders in 2017. If you look at the figures between 2017 and 2022, rapes went up 45%. Let's look at Austria. Germany, they're 3 or 4% again, 50% of the rapes. Let's look at Paris last year, 77% of the rapes.
Do you know what the figures are in these states? Are there any?
I don't know. No, I've always focused on Europe, but I'm gonna come and do some investigations. I'm going to do some documentaries in the States because this problem is everywhere. Now, when you look, just so people understand, they covered it up successfully. Along come a working class movement called the English Defence League. It was us. They tried to crush us. You're right. In the first 6 months of my activism, I had 3 dawn raids, lawfare to a level people can only imagine in their nightmares. Yeah, they come at us from every angle
Because you're pointing out that non-Muslim children are getting raped.
Yeah, the reason being that all the people that let it happen, which we now know let it happen, they've all got dirty hands. So, for example, the head in Rotherham, which is the town everyone knows about with 1,400 victims, the head of the police at that time, who allowed it all to happen, who has dirty hands, who knows he covered it up, well, he's now in charge of counter-terrorism. I just faced a prosecution for counter-terrorism last year. I got not guilty thanks to Elon Musk, but they tried to prosecute me under terrorism legislation. They have tried.
But he's not Muslim.
No. These are all of them are white liberal police or councils who are scared, who are fearful, who have succumbed to the Islamic domination, who have took their place as second-class citizens and surrendered, basically. But when you look, so let me, just for your audience to understand, one girl, in a case in Oxford, one girl was 11 or 12 years old. They heated up an iron rod with the letter M and they scolded her bum with the letter M because she was the property of Mohammed. Another young girl, they took her and they nailed her tongue to a table. Other young girls, they took out to the woods and they filled them, poured petrol over them with lighters to install fear into them. So I focused for my I was an activist on the streets till 2014. So back then you used to have to get on the streets, get thousands on the streets to get them talking about these issues. Then I found through the phone and through the internet, we need to show the world what we're seeing. So I've become an independent journalist.
Right, you started working for Rebel News.
I started working for Rebel News, yeah. I'm very grateful to Rebel News and Ezra Levant, but I went from then becoming an independent journalist to, I'd say now, probably the most watched, without blowing my own trumpet, journalist in the world, probably, on my issues, or certainly in the UK and Europe. So I focused in and I made a 5-part series. So I went to a town called Telford in the UK. You can watch these documentaries at trfilms.co.uk. But I went to a town... trfilms.co.uk. And you'll see I've done a 5-part series called The Rape of Britain. And I went to Telford, and I specifically chose Telford because Telford has a 1.7% Muslim population. Okay, so there's not many Muslims there. But Telford has a massive grooming gang, and we went there as the English Defence League in 2010. Now, 2016 or 17 or 18, they arrested lots of Muslims for the rapes that we were talking about a decade before. Yeah. Now, the police investigation identified 200 men who had been raping in the town of Telford. They prosecuted 11, so they let 189.
And again, you're saying that's because of their fear of being called Islamophobes?
Well, no, they just don't have the resources. I'll explain why. So even if you look at this one crime of rape in the town of Telford, 1.7% Muslim population. We know the police numbers identified 200. I spent 12 to 18 months in that city. What I did is I went and met survivors and their families from these rapes. I met 12, let's focus on, it was 12 or 16. I met between 12 and 16. And I sat girls down and I listened to their stories and I'd interview them for 3 hours, 4 hours, 3 times, 4 times. And I built a database. So we'd done our own police style investigation. Now, when men were named by 3 or more girls that didn't know each other, they become a star of our films. Yeah. So it's called The Rape of Britain, and each episode is about focusing on one survivor, and we tell her story, and then we go and find the men that raped her, trafficked her, prostituted her. Now in this town, there's 5 dead kids, so they've burned them alive. So in this small town, the police identified 1,000 victims. So 1,000 victims, 200 rapists. Let's look at the Muslim community in this town. It has a 1.7% Muslim community. So there's only 4,000 Muslims. So let's get rid of the women, get rid of the kids. You're looking at 1,000 Muslim men that fit the age bracket that can be involved in the rapes. Out of that 1,000 men, the police identified 200 of them. We identified 264. Yeah. So we're not talking about a handful of Muslims here. We're not talking about a very small problem here. Now that town, with no Muslim community, 1,000 victims. Rotherham's the other town that you've heard about. That only has a 3.7%.
So the horrors are horrific. Your answer is that part of the reason is people are scared. Britain has been scared. British leadership has been scared to prosecute and stop this, right?
Yep.
So they're so scared they're willing to let their children get raped.
Yep, that's the power of political correctness. They're willing to sacrifice the children, because if the public were allowed to know the true extent of the problem and what's happening, then they'll start looking up at the government, because all of these things are happening due to government policy failure. It's mass immigration that the government have invited.
So then, is this why King Charles sent out a message, have a blessed and happy Ramadan?
No,
but did not send out a message, have a happy Easter.
Happy Easter. No, I believe King Charles has loved Sharia and loved Islam for a very long time. I believe he's a traitor. Truthfully, he's not my king. He's not my king at all.
Wow, and that he's been like that for a long time.
He's been like that for a long time. Caught with bag. What did he get? £3 million in cash from Qatar. He is in bed with Qatar and has been in bed with Qatar. Qatar, you have to look. In this presentation I just done to Florida, I looked at the funding of the universities in the UK. Every one of them, and here, it's all Qatari money. Qatari own 4,000 property assets. Qatar own more property in London than the royal family. Yeah, more than the British royal family. They own everything, from the banks to the ports to the airports to
and Tucker Carlson, don't forget him.
And Tucker, of course, and Tucker Carlson. But on the grooming issue, so I said 20% of the men from the police's figures were raping kids. Now, an inquiry in that town found it was over 30%. So just in this one small town that no one in America's heard of, we have 1,000 children raped, and 20% of the Muslim, a minimum number by the police investigation, is that 20% of the Muslim men in that town were raping. And we've got 5 dead kids. So I've done my documentary series, but the question you've never been allowed to ask is why? Why are Muslims coming to our country? Why are they raping their way through it? Why are they pillaging and raping and kidnapping and torturing? The Sikhs aren't doing it? In fact, they're victims of the Muslims as well. The Hindus aren't doing it. The Jews aren't doing it. So we've had lots of immigration into our country that are not raping their way through it. Why are Muslim men 90% of the convictions? Why are 30% of the men convicted called Muhammad? So I done an investigation in that as well. We look at it in the documentary series, but I also gave a presentation when I was deplatformed and censored from every social media, everywhere. I was deleted, and I actually give the presentation in Russia of all places. And I give a presentation called this was in 2016 or 17. I don't know. It was called The Rape of Britain, and I went through the court cases and I went through what the men say. Yeah. So, for example, there was a Somali gang in Bristol, and he said it was his religious duty to do this. There were other gangs. All of the gangs called the girls dirty gullah, so they're real. That's for white. They're calling them white slags in their own Arabic language or Urdu language. They hang their own countries of the flags of their countries over the girls while they're raping them. They message one of the girls before murdering her the next day. He messaged his friend saying, "I'm going to bury that kafar bitch." Kafar being a derogatory term for non-Muslims. These rapes are religiously motivated. Yeah. And I went back in 2004. I made leaflets in Luton, and they made the front page of my newspaper in 2004, warning the public that we are being religiously and racially targeted.
So if that's the case,
yep.
Okay, and we know that a kafir must be, according to Quran, a kafir must be either enslaved,
humiliated.
It must be enslaved, converted, or killed.
Yep.
Those are the 3 reactions according to the Quran. So based upon that, though, you would think this is happening in America, let alone in the Palestinian communities or the Muslim communities that are starting up with Sharia law, let alone in Mamdani's New York.
I don't think this is happening. I know it's happening. I don't think it's happening. This is happening everywhere that you have an Islamic community. And it's happening because of their intolerant view of women. And it's happening because it's scriptured and supported to happen. So, for example, when ISIS took the Yazidi girls, they made it very clear why they did it. Because the Quran permits them to do it. Muhammad told them to do it. When the Boko Haram took the girls, the 200 Nigerian girls, the leader of Boko Haram came out the next day and said, Muhammad has commanded us to do this. Now, if you want to listen to what I'm talking about in Rotherham, in Telford, in every town and city, it's not just Rotherham, Telford. It's Oldham, it's Bradford, it's Newcastle, it's Oxford. When you think of Oxford, yeah, in America, what do you think of?
Think of the university.
Yeah, not anymore. Think of young children being raped on the house where the mosque is, or in houses, trafficked, beaten, tortured, raped, humiliated, most sickest things you can think of. And then think of a government and a council in every town and city that let it happen. That's the power of. So you're aware in 2016, before Donald Trump was elected, people were scared to speak. I've been to your cities here. I went to Washington and I interviewed people about their opinion on certain things. They were scared to tell me. This is meant to be the land of the free.
So it is in theory the line of three, but we need to make distinctions. So I'm going to ask you a question that I get asked all the time.
Yep.
Okay. Do you make a distinction between a quote unquote what the liberal media would call a moderate Muslim and a quote unquote extremist Muslim?
Yes.
Briefly, what's that distinction?
The moderate Muslim is the one who's not following the scripture of the Quran, and the extremist Muslim is the one who's following the scripture of the Quran.
Then the moderate Muslim is the kafir, and the mainstream is what we call extremism.
So look, so people understand. I'm born in Luton town. Some of the best people I've met growing up in Luton are Muslim. Yeah, some of the best people, and the people I love are Muslim.
The people they're fabulous people, but the tradition itself has challenges.
And they're not fabulous because they're Muslim. They're not.
They're just good people.
They're just good people. They're ignoring the bad parts of Islam.
So we're going to explore this a little bit more, both in the podcast session and more on the radio, as we return with Tommy Robinson here at the Rabbi's Table. As we all know, there's been a war going on in Israel for over 2 years. And one of the places that's doing so much healing and so much work is the Bnei Zion Hospital in Haifa in Israel. They're one of the top rehab facilities in the world, and where all of the victims from the north go, and many from other places throughout the country, go up to Bnei Zion in Haifa. They built a nuclear-proof bunker and put a hospital inside of it. They finished that project in July of 23, and then the war started with Hamas terrorizing and kidnapping and killing so many people on October 7th, and it's been horrible since then. Today, we have this war going on with Iran and Hezbollah, where all these wounded are going to Bnei Zion Hospital, and the hospital needs your help. The hospital needs to raise funds so they can provide more facilities. They can provide more medicine, more healing for the many people, Jews, Christians, Catholics, Druze, Muslims, all the people who have been bombed, hurt, injured. We need to help them, and you can make a difference. And I really want to invite you to. Go to healthcareforisrael.org. That's healthcareforisrael.org. Make a donation. I'm a rabbi, but rarely can I say that I've been involved in saving someone's physical life. When I've made donations to this hospital, when I've raised money for the hospital, that money goes directly and saves human lives. Rarely can any of us say that we've done that. I am begging you, I am pleading with you, please go to Healthcare for Israel. Save some lives. Every dollar, every dime that you donate is both tax deductible, but every dime goes straight to the hospital for its good work. Again, that's Healthcare for Israel. Support Israel by doing this. Support Bnei Zion Hospital. Support humanity. And make a difference by healing and saving lives. So this is the section of the Rabbi's Table that is only for podcast listeners. This is not on the radio show, just for podcasts. So it's a little bit easier for you and I because we're not on a clock. So I appreciate that. So many things to talk about. So maybe just quick questions, okay? And then to really explore, I'd really like to explore Israel with you. How dangerous is Mamdani and what's going on in Minnesota?
Mamdani is dangerous, but I think it's a blessing because America have got to see what's happening. The city's been taken over. The rest of America can look on and learn from it because there's a numbers game. It's simply a numbers game. And they could just keep their mouth shut and they'll demographically get there anyway. And then they'll elect people. So I don't know if you saw, I used it in my presentation to Florida University. There's a lady who's a friend of mine's wife who went out on a date, a pretend date, with Mamdani's campaign manager and covertly recorded the date.
Wow, I did not see this. I'd love to.
That's good. And what he says is, we did it through the mosques. What we did is we hit 100 mosques in a week. We go to the mosques and the imam tells them who to vote for. Wake up, America. This is what's happening, yeah. My council of mosques in Luton, so I'll bring everything back to my hometown. So look at New York, but I'll tell you what happened in Luton. We have 45 mosques and we have the leader of the council of mosques. The leader of the council of mosques sits down with the Labour Party, your Democrat Party, and they do deals. And that deal gets them 50,000 votes or 100,000 votes. Every Muslim. They will vote who they're told to. Now, they should lose their 501. They should lose their charity status because they're acting as political hubs, not acting as churches. But that's what mosques are doing. So they come in and they organise themselves. Now, you mentioned Minnesota. Somalians are from the hottest place on the planet. They come to America. Do you think they chose Minnesota?
I can't imagine anyone choosing Minnesota. The state bird is a mosquito for 4 months of the year, and the rest of the time, it's snowing and cold. So I actually don't understand why anyone lives there.
So they were
were
placed there. Yeah, these are plantations of Muslim communities that are going to grow at an exponential rate compared to the rest, and they're going to be loyal to who? The people that placed them there, which is who? Who opened the borders? Who brought them in? Who wants to give voting rights to all the illegals? Basically, if you look at the immigration process in your swing states, the illegal immigration, it was up 700%. There were going to be no swing states if you didn't vote. If you didn't elect Donald Trump, which is a reality, you'd never had another swing state.
So you're saying they went into Minnesota because Minnesota was consistently a purple state. It would go back and forth.
Now they've got 100,000 Somalians who will vote who they're told to by their things, and they'll do deals with the Democrat Party. They have 100,000 loyal voters, or however many it is. And I come here to America not to tell you about what I've read. Not to tell you, it's like, here's, for example, I'm born in Luton Town, I've seen the change. I was debating the expert on multiculturalism, and we're sitting on a studio like this, and I'm talking to him. I said, where were you born? Exeter. I said, okay, where are you now? Yeah, and he was in Europe. I said, Exeter is 99.99999% Christian white. You're the expert on multiculturalism. I'm a minority as a white Englishman in my town. I've seen the change. My cousin was raped. My friend's dad was murdered by a Muslim gang. I've seen the heroin. I've seen all of the extremism. I've had friends who I grew up with who have now become ISIS terrorists. I've seen it. Yeah, but you're somehow the expert. So I come to America not to talk about what I think or what I've read. I'm just telling you what I've experienced. I bring a warning to America. Say, listen, you speak about immigration here, and I used to hear you talking about Mexican or Hispanic immigration. I just laugh. I think you have got no idea, yeah, at all as Americans. Now your borders were opened for 8 years under Joe Biden. When your mass open border immigration, it was no longer Latinos coming. Okay, they're coming from Somalia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, all of these countries. Let me tell you the Pew Research in Afghanistan. 99% of Afghanis want Sharia law. Okay, 89% of them believe in stoning a woman. That means every 100 that are coming into your country, because Joe Biden opened your borders to Afghanistan, you have to understand the difference here between talking about Mexico and Latinos or any people from these nations who are culturally quite similar, yeah, religiously very similar. You're talking about now a hostile immigration that hates your way of life, hates your culture, and doesn't come to assimilate, but comes to dominate. It's not here to integrate.
And that's really the answer. They're not here to integrate. It's a different thought. And I wrote an article not too long ago that Mamdani is not a socialist. Mamdani is a Muslim. Yeah, he's posing as a socialist.
Muslim first, Muslim second, Muslim third.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know?
You've talked about the grooming gangs, and when you talk about the imagery, it brings up some really horrible imagery in my own mind from October 7th, because I saw images I can't unsee.
I've seen them. I watched the footage. I went to Israel and watched the
47 minutes.
The 47 minutes, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the grooming gangs, there's an obvious parallel. I have made the argument for years that there's an Islamic war on Western civilization. It's not by Muslims, it's by the theology, and that we need to reframe ourselves. We think, quote unquote, extreme Muslims are extreme and the moderate ones are mainstream, when in fact the extreme is mainstream and the moderate are not practicing. They're radical liberals. And that the first line of defense is Israel and the last line of defense is the United States. You've been to Israel. I know you spent time there, and you have an idea of what really happened on October 7th and what continues to happen because you experienced it in your own home country. You get it.
I get it. Do you know, I'm growing up in Luton. I'm surrounded by extremists, by radical, by jihadists. I listened to them growing up talking about Jews. I understood how they thought of Jews. I'd seen it all growing up. So there's actually a video, and it's Luton Muslims marching for Gaza. And in the early years, and there's thousands and thousands, the whole Muslim community coming out of Berry Park. Berry Park's the Muslim area of my town. Well, now the whole town's Muslim, but back then it was just that was the Muslim area. And they're chanting, Qayuba, Qayuba, Qayuba. I wonder what they're talking about. And then when I looked into what they're talking about, it's exactly what Sneeko, who's an American influencer in New York. He made a video this week chanting the same thing in New York, celebrating. They're chanting about the death and the beheading of 600 Jews. And they're celebrating, and it's a Jewish tribe that surrendered. And then later that night, after beheading the leader of the tribe, Muhammad married his wife. So he raped her, Sophia, that night. These are all things that, to your average audience listening, and I'm sorry if you have to go down this rabbit hole, but you need to, You can't confuse Islam with other religions. You just can't. You have to understand who Muhammad was. You have to understand the teachings of Islam. And I understood all that. So I understand that you've got, say, Israel sat here, surrounded by Sharia-driven totalitarian hellholes, to put it quite simply. The only place with rights, with democracy, with any rights for anyone, homosexuals or anyone, is in the state of Israel. So I get that. But what's happening in America, and I'm sorry, but Israel's lost the battle, losing the battle. There's a mass battle going on outside of Israel and inside of America to influence and change the minds of the next generation of Americans. And it's a very well funded movement.
And it's very well funded, and it's been going on for decades.
It's been
I will say this: a large part of the problem is the Jewish establishment and rabbis who have been cowards, who have not stood up, who have not said this is not okay, who have not said this is Judaism, this is not Judaism, etc. That's to me a big problem. There were the riots at UCLA, and I've said this numerous times. You could actually go there and see a sign that says "Queers for Palestine." Now, you and I both know there is no historical Palestine, right? But forget about that. Queers for Palestine. Queer Jews for Palestine. But wait, it gets better, because there actually was, and I don't know who these people claiming to be rabbis are, queer rabbis for Palestine. Now, they're not rabbis as far as I'm concerned, but beyond that, that says so much about how Jews have not defended themselves. They're not realizing, too many Jews don't realize what you've realized.
Even outside the Jews, it's like I look and think, for me, I look at Israel. If Israel falls, we fall. Yeah, I get that. Right? How don't people understand it? So on October 8th, Hamas made it clear that Israel's not our goal. Okay, London and New York are. They made it very clear in their statements. This conflict, which is what it is, it's a religious war that was launched 1,400 years ago. It wasn't launched in 1948. Right? This didn't start in 1948.
And it didn't start in 2023, and this is a 1,400-year war, of which this is just the latest battle.
And to the Jews, it's like, so Mein Kampf, Hitler's book, is 7% Jew hatred. The Quran's 11%.
I think it's more than that.
The Hadiths are 14%. Yeah. So, but the point is, to the non-Jewish community, because I'll just say, you do not know what you're talking about. I listen to American influencers who are here talking about a Muslim-Christian alliance and this image that's being portrayed that Israel is behind the division of Muslims and Christians, and Israel have done all of this, and it's the Jews who have done all of this. And I think, well, I live in my hometown. I've never met a Jew, and I've just been an onslaught of hostility and violence from this community, an onslaught. An absolute attack. And so when I listen to these influencers in America who have not yet experienced it, none of their videos are going to age well. You just had 4 successful terrorist attacks in a 2-week period, 4, from a 1% Muslim population. Now that population is going to double, and it's going to double like all of ours have. And I'll give you an example. Manchester, the city of Manchester, after Ariana Grande concert was blown up by Salman Abedi, who's a Muslim, who could recite the Quran without looking at it, whose father was a terrorist, who come into our country as a terrorist, was given asylum as a terrorist. Do you know, if we had a Muslim ban, they called it the Muslim ban under Donald Trump in 2016. If we had that same ban, just exactly the same, in England, he wouldn't have been able to go get his bomb train in Libya, and we'd have 26 children still alive.
Should Europe and America adopt the immigration policies of Israel?
No, I think even your policy. What policies do you have? I think America and Europe should adopt the policies of ending Islamic immigration. We have to end Islamic immigration. Immigration has to benefit the nation. Let me give you another thing. So 2023, Germany had 40,000 Japanese migrants. They had 4 criminal violent convictions. In that same year...
Wait. 40,000.
40,000 Japanese migrants in Germany in that year, and 4 of them were convicted of a violent offence. In that same year, 25,000 Algerians, 1,790 violent convictions.
Wow.
Now, so immigration is supposed to benefit the nation. Your Somali immigration, 80% of them are on state benefits in Minnesota. 10 years they've been here, many of them can't speak English. Yeah, they're not gonna either. Okay, they're not gonna. So you have the same problem. So immigration, there was a study come out of Holland, and in Holland they've done a study for first generation Islamic immigration was a burden on the state. Second generation immigration so once they had kids is still a burden and reliant on the state. Third generation immigration is still a burden on the state. Now, why as a nation would you be important people who are not going to work, not going to assimilate, and not going to immigrate? The experiment has been done. Unfortunately, we were the experiment.
So then, okay.
Why would you continue?
So let's play this out for just another moment. Then I'd like to do a couple of other things while we're in the podcast session. Let's just play this out then. So we're going to, if we eliminate immigration, we say if you're Muslim, you can't immigrate. Okay. At what point is there a line where fighting extremism becomes extremism itself?
Yeah, it's not extreme. You have border policies.
But you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get the analogy, but it's not extreme. You have to protect the United States. You have to protect your country and any immigration. Do you want the rape statistics that we've got? Do you know in 2003 we had 8,800 rapes? In 2023 we had 88,000. Yeah. Do you know? 1975 there was 350 rapes in Sweden. Last year there was 32,000. Do you want to be like this? Due to not being fear of being labelled as extreme, would you rather just all your women get raped?
Okay, so what could be done? Is there something that could be done that could be a balance of, because there are also amazing people who identify as Muslim,
yep,
who want to integrate into this nation.
Yeah, how do we know who?
That's what I'm asking you.
So what I'd ask is, if say like I put this in front of you now and it's got 10 Skittles or sweets on it, and out of those 10, if you eat one of them, it's going to kill you. But the other 9 are
the 100,000 M&Ms.
The other 9 are fine. Yeah. Are you going to eat it? Are you going to take your pick, or are you going to think?
Depends how much I really like Skittles.
Yeah. But no. So it's like, look, this isn't. We shouldn't be experimenting or playing a game or playing a lottery with the future of our nation.
Then if we extend that farther and farther, then we really are accepting that the war is between Islam and the rest of the world.
Well, you're just accepting what they're telling you. You're accepting that the scripture in the Quran is legit, and that this. Do you know Thomas Jefferson? Obviously, founding father of the United States. So.
And our first war was with Barbary pirates because of him.
Did you know what he said?
No, I didn't say that.
No. So he wrote to Tripoli at the time. He wrote to the ambassador to try and understand why American ships were being attacked by these Muslims. When there was,
to put this in perspective, people don't know, this was our first war.
So the first war of the United States was against the Barbary pirates, who were kidnapping and enslaving. More slaves than any of the other slave trade, all right? Yeah? And they were non-Muslims. They were white. They were all taken slave, yeah? But the Barbary pirates were attacking American ships. And Jefferson couldn't understand. So he wrote, and they said, why are they attacking us when we don't have a conflict with these people? Do you know what got wrote back? And I used this in my presentation to show Americans at Florida University. Because Muhammad commands them to attack. Muhammad tells them, unless we pay the special tax, the jizya, they have to convert us, pay the tax, or die. Yeah, that is why you were at war. And the first war, when the first time ever the United States flag, if you listen to the anthem of your Royal Marines, the words are about this. Yeah, they tell the story of this, about this. And Jefferson said, if we don't keep our eye on this idea, which was Islam, he didn't talk about extremist Islam. He didn't talk about this extremist group, who are misrepresenting the Quran.
Right.
He talked about the Quran, not just Jefferson, because you can look at Jefferson. Adams, one of your leaders, exactly the same. So previously in history, the political leaders of a country, the clergy, the religious leaders, their job is to educate the public on danger. Winston Churchill said, individual Muslims will show amazing traits, but Islam has the power to bring Europe back to the Dark Ages. He also described Islam in a man as being like rabies in a dog. Yeah, not mine. Churchill. Gladstone, Sir William Gladstone, held the Quran above his head in Parliament and said, "You'll never have peace on this earth so long as we have this book. This book is a violent and cursed book." Again, no idea of interpretation. if you want to listen to...
You can just read the text itself. The text itself says very clearly in one point that the day of judgment will not come until every Jew is killed. Those few still living hide behind rocks and trees. The tree calls out, "O Abdullah, O Muslim, come and
Hamas
kill him."
used that in their manifesto.
Yeah, this is, and
That's the
Hamas
scripture.
does.
That's the
They
scripture
literally
from
use the
them.
text, as does the Muslim Brotherhood. So,
Can I tell you about my trip to Israel?
I want to hear about it.
2016, yeah. So, and I went because I think I talk about a lot of these issues. So I studied the Quran. I studied it inside out. So when I talk about it, I know it, yeah, because I don't want to be ignorant.
No, I agree with you.
Right? The people who call me ignorant, I think, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know the Quran, you don't know Islam, you don't know history, you don't know anything. Yet so with Israel, I was very prominent from the start of my activism in 2009. I spoke out for Israel and I spoke out for Jews because I'd seen it. Do you know there was a Jewish family, remember, a Holocaust in the UK, in my hometown, and they had to barricade themselves inside the town hall as dozens and groups and large groups of the same group that I was opposing back then had come to confront them with megaphones. And I can still see there was a little 5-year-old girl screaming and crying as they had to lock themselves inside the town hall. I'd seen it all. We invited Rabbi Nakram Shifram, surfing rabbi from California, when we started the English Defence League, because I was watching him. But I went to Israel 2015, and I went there because I wanted to understand how Muslims have 2 million, how Israel has 2 million Muslims in the state of Israel. Let's not go into Gaza and that. We have 2 million successfully living in the state of Israel. So
This is your first trip, right?
My first trip. And I thought, I need to know how they live. What security measures does Israel have? And how are they living? Because I know that that's what's coming to us. So I went there and I saw the bus stops that had bomb shelters in and had big bollards preventing cars from ramming the bus stops. And I remember looking in 2014-15 going, yeah, this is going to come to us. And I can tell you right now, our Christmas markets are getting cancelled across Europe. Every single Christian event or religious day has massive, I call them diversity bollards or Islamic bollards. They have to bollard every town centre to prevent the attacks that happened in Nice, happened in Berlin, happened across the UK, trucks ramming people. So I went to Israel to understand. And when I went there, I paid some young Muslims and I risked my life. And I had a big fallout with my friend. I went with my friend from school. His name's Dean. He's from Jamaican descent. His family are Jamaican descent. He's a British lad. You know, I grew up with him. He loves history. So we went to Israel. And when we were there, I met these young Muslims and in the state of Israel. And I paid them. And I said, I want you to take me to this refugee camp. And it was a Fatah-controlled refugee camp. And I said, I want to go there. They didn't know who I was. The Muslims didn't. And I went to my mate, I said, right, I've got us in. Yeah, because when you go to Israel, anyone who knows, they have all these signs that say, do not pass here, stop, do not go past here, yeah, basically warning Jews, Christians, do not enter these areas. Me, I just saw those signs and thought, I want to go to those areas, yeah. I can't come here and spend 6 days, 7 days, 8 days listening to Jews and hearing, or Christians in Israel and hearing I need to go there.
Right. It's not just about going to the Holy Sepulchre and the wall.
No.
You need to go, need to see the rest.
I need to see the rest.
You investigate things.
So I paid these young Arabs and they took me there. And there's video footage of me walking around this camp. Yeah? And there's video footage of this. And my heart bled for the kids. It's a successful what they do, yeah? Because I've got 3 kids. And I said to my mate, the gentleman who was showing me around was a 4th generation refugee, Muslim. And what he said is, I'm 4th generation, my children will be 5th, they'll be 6th, they'll be 7th. We will always be refugees. He said, did you know we've had 2 times more money than Germany after the World Cup to rebuild and we still live here? Yeah. And then I said, where's the football pitch? Because the kids were there, I had a football playing with them. He said, there is no football pitch. I said, where's the park? He said, there is no park. And then he said, never fund Free Palestine. And I'm like, what? And he said, don't fund Free Palestine because the money doesn't come to us. Yeah? And he doesn't know who I am. Yeah? So I'm doing this walk around. I spent the day there with him. And I said to him, who's oppressing you, sir? Who's oppressing your family? Who are you oppressed by? And he said the Palestinian Authority, which really threw me at the time.
Oh, at the time you didn't realize that?
No, I didn't know. So he said, I expected, yeah, before going there, I expected everything to be the Jews in Israel. But he said the Palestinian Authority oppressing me. Right. I said, how are they oppressing you? What are you talking about? And he said, well, basically, and as we're walking around, and again, you can watch this footage, I'll send you it, yeah? On the side of the houses are murals, and he described them as martyrs. So, and all of these people, to understand what's happened here, this woman who left this house right here blew up a bus in a suicide attack in Israel. Yeah? So she's on the side, and he describes her a martyr, and I'm thinking, well, she's a fucking terrorist, yeah? Excuse my French. She's a terrorist.
Because it's the podcast side, so I'm not so concerned.
Okay, good. Well, I managed to keep it stum for the interview on the radio. But she's a terrorist, but I didn't say it. I said, okay, so she's a martyr. What about him? He goes, well, he left it. But then he explained to me that the Palestinian Authority, this is what we now know, or people know as pay for slay, which I had no knowledge of. Yeah. So he tells me that the Palestinian Authority take money and they give, say, for example, this woman who left this house, or this man that left this house. If they leave and they go into the state of Israel and they kill an Israeli, then they get money, which makes them equivalent of a millionaire. They get money every month for the rest of their lives. Now, I heard this and I went, bullshit. That's bullshit. Because then I sit when I get back and I look up the Palestinian Authority. We fund them. As in me, taxpayer Britain. So I'm giving money to the Palestinian Authority, who are then paying it, and it made me view a lot of things different, because I said to my mate, the only way out of this camp is to go and kill an Israeli, yeah? And when he said Israeli, so I run over with him again. I said, so let me get this straight. Someone leaves here, they've got 4 kids, they're stuck, they're never getting out of it. They go and kill a Jew. They're
Not
out.
just a Jew.
That's what he said. And he said, an Israeli. I said, what do you mean? Yeah, and again, for me, for my moment, I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, just kill an Israeli.
Doesn't have to be a Jew.
It can be a Muslim.
Yep.
And this is what he told me, yeah? And I was like, no, that can't be right. You've got to be talking shit. You've got to be lying to me, yeah? So I listened to everything he said. And as I walked around, and I said to my mate, and what the walk I went on is the same walk they bring European politicians to go on. Yeah? And by the end of that walk and that day that I spent with those kids in that camp, as I'm walking around it, I wanted to give them money. Right? It works. I don't agree with the state of Palestine. It's all nonsense. I hate Hamas, but I still had feelings for these kids. Yeah.
Right.
So it's a purposely felt. They'll keep them in that position to continue the money which doesn't fund the development of their state. It funds jihad and it funds mercenaries.
Have you been back to Israel since 16?
Yeah, so I went there in 2016, and do you know what? I had a big argument with my mate, as I said, before we went there. We had a falling out, because he said I haven't come in to get killed, yeah? And so the people who criticised me, I would have got killed. If they knew I was Tommy Robinson from the English Defence League, the most outspoken critic of Islam, and I'm walking around Fatah-controlled refugee camp, they're grabbing me, yeah? But I risked that. And
that's a personal choice.
Yeah, I risked that because I wanted to hear from them. And and when I got back into the state of Israel, I sat down with this gentleman, and I'll be totally honest, at that time I spent there that time, I related with him more than I related with anyone. He matched my background, shall I say. He seemed like you could pick him up and put him in the estate I'm from in Luton, and we would have got along. Yeah, that's what he was like, the lad. He was a Muslim lad. But when I got back, I put the cameras on him, and I said, can I tell you who I am? And he said, what? I said, have you heard of the English Defence League? He said, yes, I have. I said, my name's Tom Robinson. I founded the English Defence League. And he was gutted, but he was like, why? I said, because I had to hear you. I had to hear from you as a Muslim refugee. I had to hear and see your problems so that I could understand them. So when I go back, and then when I was in Israel, then I went up to Muslims on the Golan Heights. It's 2016. Trump's just been elected. Bombs are going off. Syria, ISIS. And I said to him, and again, everything I've been told, I said to him, what's it like living in Israel? The Jewish population of Israel. What's it like for you? He said, it's blessed. It's brilliant. I said, what do you mean? Are you oppressed? He said, no, I'm not oppressed. I pray 5 times a day. I said, okay. I said, and then he looked and he pointed over at the bombs going off. He said, you think I'd rather live there, sir? And he started laughing. He said, I have everything I want. Yeah? And then I went up to other Muslims, and there was about 1,000 young Arabs as we're driving back. And there's 1,000 young Arabs. I've got an I Love Israel, Star of David t-shirt that I bought from a souvenir shop. I said, stop the car. And I went walking into these 1,000 Arabs, yeah, and they're racing camels. Yeah, I'm expecting some hostility. No one batted an eyelid. Yeah, so then I ask all them, and there's men standing with machine guns in there, and I said to them, "What do you think of Trump?" Yes, Trump. We need strong man. And I'm like, what? We need strong man for Middle East. We need strong man. America has to be strong man. And I'm like, well, hold on a minute. So I obviously spoke to lots of Muslims when I was there, all of whom were living, once we got back to the state of Israel, not disputed territories, but the state of Israel. they're all pretty happy, man. So then I hadn't been back there again. I went back there recently. And to be honest, going there recently has caused me a hell of a lot of flack. Not that anyone who knows my life, I've faced criticism, I've faced labels, I've faced smears, and I've faced attacks. I don't really care if I'm right. I know I'm right. Yeah? I know I'm right. So the people who speak on these issues, who have not been surrounded by jihad, who don't understand Islam, who think they're right, they're not right. And none of these videos they've done, whether it be Tucker Carlson, all these people in America, they're never going to age well for them. Because you now have a hostile Islamic community here, and they're going to grow, and there's going to be more jihad and more jihad and more jihad. And they can't just blame everything on Mossad. Yeah? So, but I went back recently under the invite of the Israeli government. So I was invited by Minister Chikli. And I think that...
Who's the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Diaspora Affairs.
Diaspora Affairs. And I think that, so 2007, the October 7th attack happens. At this point, I'm invisible because I'm deplatformed from every social media. Elon Musk, I made a video when I didn't have social media. I had some little one called Getter, an American thing, which was... So I made a video the day after that attack, just saying... Hamas or ISIS, what don't you know, man? Like this is, so I made a video detailing and going against Hamas and talking up and saying about what happened, and that video went viral on X and other social media platforms, but I wasn't on them. Then I got given back my voice by Elon Musk, and at the time, I'd watched our capital C. I think, look, I don't want to say what happened on October 7th. I think that the public had to see this in the sense of they had to see the celebration. They had to see the takeover. They had to see the police let them do it. They had to see the calls for jihad on the streets of London.
Yeah, but here's your problem in America. October 8th, all the leftist minds that, we want a two-state solution, all the things that you and I both know are absolutely impractical.
Well, they've been offered it for how many years anyway?
So those people's minds imploded. They went nuts because they could not integrate their reality that, these are just a peaceful people with what happened October 7th. They saw the footage, etc. By December 7th, it was in the rearview mirror of pretty much every American's view, including every Jew. It's not that big a deal. Let's just make peace. That was just a few people. They want to have peace. By January 7th, it was in the rearview mirror of pretty much every rabbi in this country. I write an email. I write it around 2 or 3 in the morning every night because Israel's 10 hours ahead. It goes out to a few thousand people about what's really going on in Israel. Because everyone's put it in their rearview mirror. They can't deal with it. They don't want to deal with it. It's antithetical to their liberal belief system, their belief system in a two-state solution. So, what's the big deal? What happened to the hostages? What's the big deal? They just want peace. You and I know that's not the truth. We know what the Quran says. So then that becomes the place of...
I read a list of what the Quran says about Jews. I read it in my presentation.
Yeah, it's 217 times. I think that's the number. So what ends up happening is you end up having these influencers who start leading Americans to believe that Donald Trump has been bullied into doing this war and is doing this war. We are in this war because of either A, oil, or B, Bibi Netanyahu has told him what to do, and it's for Israel. And it's Israel's war, which should stay out. Real simply and succinctly, is this Israel's war?
No, well, quite simply, do you know what a different prospect that I've looked at is everyone I've met here, from General Flynn to senators to congressmen, in my journey in the last 2 months, I've asked everyone the same question at the end. Asked them all the same question. What's the biggest threat to the United States of America? All of them have said China. All of them. Now, Venezuela, when Trump went in and took out
Maduro.
When China has 100 days of oil. 100 days. That's it in their country.
It was a big thing that we just had this blockade and a Chinese tanker was stopped.
So China has 100 days of oil. That's it. They're there. So now if China is the biggest threat to the United States and Trump took out Maduro and then took out the Islamic supremacist regime of Iran, that is America first. Yeah. If you're in danger of a future conflict with China. And it's America first in the sense that the supremacist hostage takers of Iran, that the Ayatollah They've funded 10 terror attacks in my country. They're behind Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, every terrorist organisation. They call for the demand of the destruction of the West, of the death to the United States, to Israel and to Britain, to all of us. Yeah. Now, if you could replace that regime, so for me, from the start of this conflict, I don't know why people are saying it's Israel's conflict. And I understand a lot more even, people say, well, Israel has an influence in this country, that country. When I went to Israel, this most recent one, I stood and I went under to ask any question I want of anyone I want. And I made videos. I don't know if you watched them. I made a video where I went to a Sudanese Eritrean area in Tel Aviv. And I met Jews who have been driven out of there. And I met Jews who it was identical to what we're saying in our country. They're a minority. The schools are now 97% Muslim. They've been driven. They feel like strangers in Tel Aviv. So we're told by the other influencers and the people who want hatred against the Jews or against Israel, yeah, that the Jews are the ones causing mass immigration to our countries to make us minorities. That's what the argument is. So I'm standing in Israel saying, well, who bought this idea? So this is the state of Israel. And these Jews feel alienated and driven out and are facing hostility from this group who have flooded their nation. And then when I spoke to the members of government, they said that if they didn't build a wall, which they built, then Sudanese and Eritreans would have took over the state of Israel. The amount of them were coming in.
Interesting.
But they built a wall. Yeah. But I met Jews who feel that their government, and then when they've tried to get these Muslims deported, the Supreme Court prevents, so you might have Netanyahu's government and you might have politicians that want to deport some of these illegal immigrants, but exactly the same as the Supreme Court here or in Brazil, the corruption of the court system.
Well, the court system in Israel is
blocking them. So,
at some point I'm probably going to have to do a show on what really the realities of Israeli politics and the court.
Well, I went to Jerusalem. I went to Jerusalem and asked questions of all the Muslim business owners,
and they were very happy, weren't they?
Very happy.
Yeah.
Very happy. I met a lovely, wonderful Muslim imam from the UK. I say wonderful. He was very fair, and he lost his job. I don't know if you saw the video. I met a Muslim imam from London, from Leicester, and we talk about Israel. And he says the Jews have a right to live here. Yeah? He said the Jews have a right to live here, but everyone has to live here peacefully, and that's what's happening in certain places. And he was very open. He lost his job when he got back for that conversation because he showed any sympathy to reality. He showed any sympathy. But the problem we have is all the Americans or the British, the ones who hate Israel, they've never been there.
They've never been there. It was Douglas Murray's great line to this idiot poser, Dave Smith, when he said, you can't time travel, but you can travel. If you haven't been to Israel, you can't really make a...
You shouldn't be making a comment. No, because everything you think you know is the opposite.
It's
everywhere.
And I've said to Jews for decades, you have the right to criticize Israeli government. Okay, it's a democracy. However, you're an American Jew, and if you really have a problem with the Israeli government, you can make aliyah, you can become an Israeli citizen, and you can get involved in politics. So either support them or shut your mouth.
Did you see the attack? So I got attacked by lots of Jewish groups when I went to Israel. So the Board of Deputies in the UK come out very strongly against me. But then the Board of Deputies are pro-mass immigration, pro-Marxism.
Right, this is the Lapid side. This is the
LGBTQ.
side. Yeah, this is the far... I did an article on...
But I never knew there...
I did a series of articles on that there is a just as deep or a worse deep state in Israel as there is here in the States.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that. So what we see of media is very different. That's why I do this newsletter.
But the Board of Deputies then they hate Israel.
Yeah,
they never spoke up for Israel. They're not, too weak.
They're not Zionists, and
what is a Zionist?
All Zionist is someone who says that Jews should be able to have a homeland. Bingo, that's it.
Well, there's 55 Islamic ones. Why can't the Jews have one?
There you go. That's it. Look, I need to. If you're starting to study the works of Rabbi Meir Kahane, would be. I looked
at. And he was ousted, and he was crushed.
And yet, you know what? He was. So I want to come back to the Iran and the war, but very quickly on Kahane. Kahane was. I grew up in a world where Kahane was viewed as evil. Okay, I grew up in 1970s America. Okay, this guy was verboten. He was forbidden. And then I actually started studying him not too long ago. Not what people said about him, but what he said was brilliant. And it's what any people say today. What I then found out is there's this great rabbi of blessed memory, a deceased rabbi named Shlomo Carlebach, who's the ultimate love, peace, we're gonna win a war through music. He went to the Knesset after the Yom Kippur War, and he said, you have the greatest army, you need an army for peace. Bring over 50 of my holy hippies. We will play music for all of the Muslim and Arab parties, and we will have peace that way. I mean, this is his mindset, okay? They were close friends, and they taught together because they both saw that there's a war going on. And Karl Bach said, I want to try and do it this way. But he accepted that what Kahane was saying was just as real. And we've now seen that.
Well, unfortunately, same as me, when I first started talking, everyone would condemn me. Now people can watch back my videos from 15, 20 years ago, and they're like, damn, he was right.
Yeah.
We've been proven right with time, and we'll be proven right more so as time.
So all right. We're in Iran. You and I both realize this is America's war. This is not Israel's war. It's war for Western civilization, more accurately.
Well, it was always going to happen.
Right.
So this war at some point was coming, yeah? It was always going to happen because if Iran, so just so people understand, Iran aren't concentrated on Iran. The Ayatollah supremacist mindset is about world domination. It's the same as Hamas. It's not borders. There's no borders.
No, it's a worldwide caliphate of Sharia law.
Yeah.
Period.
Worldwide caliphate is what they want for Sharia law, and they want their end goal to get there. So if they had the facilities of a nuclear button, they'd press it right now. And they wouldn't be worried about you nuclear bombing them back because that gets them to heaven. They'd happily be jumping all over it.
I've actually said that they are more dangerous than Nazis because the Nazi wanted to kill the Jew, but he didn't want to die doing it. Yeah, these guys want to kill all of Western civilization and are happy.
And if they die doing it, they get to their
They get extra bonus points.
Yeah, it's great.
So here we are, and as we're taping this show, and there's a blockade. I don't know what's happened in the last number of hours, but a blockade that's sort of working, it seems, to whatever extent or not extent. There's dialogue that there's going to be negotiations. They're going to go back to the table. Iran is saying, oh, well, we don't need nuclear enrichment for weapons. We just want nuclear enrichment for other things. You and I both know what's going on here. How should the U.S. handle Iran? And how should Americans handle it?
Crush them. Absolutely annihilate them. Not Iran. Let's not mix up Iran and the Islamic State of Iran, because the Persian people, for Americans who think this is just another Afghanistan and Iraq, you have to understand the difference in the people. This is nothing like Afghanistan or Iraq, because in Afghanistan, as I told you earlier, 99% want Sharia law. Yeah? So you remove the Taliban, it's coming back because the people want it. Yeah. Well, the Persian people aren't followers of Islam. Yeah, they've been enslaved by Islam. They don't want to cover their hair. They want freedom. Look how many mosques are burnt down there. Yeah, look how many of them are leaving. So there's a real swell of people there that want freedom, that want and love Israel.
How do we do it? How do we make it happen?
I think what he's doing now is hoping for a revolution from within. I think that's what he's looking at doing now. But the pressure's on Trump, unfortunately, because so many people are being influenced by Qatari money and Iranian money, and then siding against Trump. So many of his own base seem to be turning against him, without understanding the longevity of what he's trying to do. If he's successful in doing it, he's took out the biggest funders of terrorism in the world and the biggest funders of hate against you, the West, and you, America. Yeah, not just against Israel; it's against us, all of us.
The guy who really gets it in his administration is Rubio.
Yeah,
Rubio really gets it. Vance doesn't. Rubio really gets it, though.
But it's not hard to get. Look at who Iran are, look at what they say, look at what they do, look at who they fund, look at what they represent, and then understand that if you could replace them, and then even look at China. If America is successful in removing the Ayatollah's regime and a new regime comes into Iran where people have freedom, those people, there will be statues built of Donald Trump in that country. Yeah? They will love him forever. So people who don't understand the Persian people need to understand the rich cultural identity that they have and that they had that goes back, and that it's not under Islam, yeah, and that they want freedom from Islam, and then understand that the West, us, we played our part in enslaving them. So a historical wrong has been righted in the attack from Trump against them, because we all played our part, yeah, whether it be America and Great Britain, in the enforcement of the Ayatollah and his regime, which have enslaved 90 million people. And the only really fighters, do you know, to Americans, when they're talking about this subject, I think deeply about everything I talk about. So think about this. After January 6th, you were scared, right? You would have been scared to go to a protest after that, right? You're scared to speak out, some of you, because you might lose your job, right? You might get, your neighbours might look at you differently. You might lose your social circle. So think about all that. Because I think about Britain, and I know that our population was scared and have been scared for 20, 30 years. And they're scared of the things I've just spoke about, losing their jobs, social status, all these different things. Think about this. Those women in Iran, know full well they're going to get massacred. They're going to lose their lives. Their family can be killed. They're still taking off their hijab and coming out on the streets. They maintained going on the streets for 45 days continuously whilst being butchered, raped and murdered, and still they got up and still they went out on those streets. So when you talk about, even if you want to be against it, still recognise the courage of the Persian people who are fighting against the biggest oppressors since Adolf Hitler. Yeah, understand the battle. Don't just willingly say we don't want to be. It's another Iraq, another Afghanistan. No, it's not. Be on the right side of history. Donald Trump is on the right side of history. America's intervention against those supremacist slave owners is the right side of history. Yeah, it's being on the right side of history. I'm confident on the right side of history. It's why I stand with Israel against all of these jihadists that surround them. And then people say, well, Israel has an influence in that country and it has an influence in that country. Well, it bloody well has to. If you look at Lebanon and you go to the other border of Israel, where there was 100,000 Hezbollah fighters, 100,000. Do you know where they get their money from? Do you know they earn 4 times more than what the Lebanese government can afford to pay them? They earned 4 times more because the money comes from Iran. Yeah, you take out the money, which is what they're doing. You'll take out all the jihad, which will give back some freedom to the people in Lebanon, especially the Christians, who had the country taken over through what? Jihad, not through Israel. Who's funding the mosques in this country?
And Beirut used to be the Paris of the Middle East.
Paris in the Middle East. It was destroyed through what? Jihad. Speak to the people in Iran. Speak to all of these countries used to be Christian nations.
Look, you make this great line, be on the right side of history.
Yeah.
That's really, I think that may be the great line, is that to recognize that this, stop being scared, this is what's important.
Take them out. Don't just take them out. Finish the job.
And get it
Go
done.
and finish the job. Finish the job. I know I think America have lost 10 armed forces here. I think 10 deaths. Devastating. You've took out the whole navy of Iran. You've took out every airport. You've took out every air fighter. You've took out the biggest threat to the United States of America and to Western civilization. Yeah, you've took out the biggest funders, but you haven't finished it off. Go and finish them.
And because cancer needs to be destroyed.
Finish them. And my argument was never even, I used to argue for this, but not even on the side of the Americans, not on the side of oil, not on the side of China. I just used to look at these people, because this isn't the first revolution attempt. I used to look every time there's an uprising by the Persian people, the Iranian people fighting for freedom, and the women are getting massacred. I just used to look and think, please just give them their freedom. Yeah, I interviewed, when I come to DC, that you will not meet better migrants than those who have left and fled from Iran. Yeah, you won't meet better people. Integrated, assimilated into your country. We have a great Persian community in Great Britain.
And we have a fabulous.
And they're patriots.
Well, there's a Persian Jewish community that actually started when they left Israel in the 6th century before the Common Era. They go to Babylon. Some come back to rebuild the temple. Some stay there. And they stay there all the way till the 1970s.
Yeah.
For 2,500 years. And I've always said I want my kids to marry Persian girls.
You want what?
I want my kids to marry Persian girls.
Okay. Well,
you're right.
I've always watched it and just thought, I want them to be free, because in our generation, we have to look in our generation, no one has fought like they've fought. No one has been fearless like they've been. And remember, you're scared to lose your job. We're all scared about the words we use. Yeah, these people are being butchered, man, and they're still getting up.
And it's important to realize who they're being butchered by, the Islamic regime. And we're going to come back to that on the radio program with Angela Vanderpluym.
Cool.
As we delve more into not just what's been going on in Iran, not just what's been going on in the Muslim world, but how that is also taking place here in America. We're going to have more of this with Tommy Robinson here at the Rabbi's Table. I've been blessed to travel all over the world. I have to be honest. One of my favorite places to go, especially with my family, is up to Reno, and specifically up to the Atlantis Resort up in Reno. It is beautiful. It's an amazing hotel, amazing restaurants. Reno's this fabulous little city. It really is the biggest little city in the world. You can go in the spring or the summer to Lake Tahoe. You can ski in the winter. Everything is up there. And I want to recommend that you go to Atlantis Casino and Resort. Go atlantiscasino.com, ATLANTIS, casino.com. Make your reservation. Spend a couple of days or a week up there. I promise you'll be happy about it. I know that I always am whenever we go up. We're back here at the Rabbi's Table with Tommy Robinson, you're really not that controversial. You have some very clear opinions, and we're very blessed in this segment. We're always joined by Angela Vanderpluym, who is an author, an activist, a brilliant woman who you actually know of and have spent some time with. So Angela, are you there? There we go.
Hi, I'm here. Hi, guys. How are you?
Thank you for joining us. So this is the section with Angela and some of her fields of expertise, which really intersect with a lot of your stuff as well. We'd started talking about the Islamic takeover of different nations, your communities. For a moment, let's talk about what's going on in this nation. Now, you're familiar with what the end results can be through what's happened in England. But Angela, maybe you can share some of your research in terms of Sharia Islamic communities here in the United States.
Sure, yeah. So I'm from Chicago, Illinois. Chicago, Illinois, in my view, has basically been taken over a long time ago. But let's focus on our mutual friend, Amy Mack, and the wonderful team at Ware Foundation and everything that they've exposed, right? So they've exposed different Islamic Sharia cities coming out of Texas. We have some in California. We have some in Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas. These are red states. And what they're doing is they're coming over here. They're buying farmland, heartland of America. It's supposed to be the Bible Belt. It's supposed to be patriotic, proud American land. They're coming over here. They buy a couple acreages, they start building their mosque, they buy more acres, they turn it into an Islamic city. Now, what I've found, and I think is most interesting, is that the imams that they're bringing in, a lot of them are coming from Al-Azhar University. And I'm sure both of you know what Al-Azhar University is.
Where are you getting to, and you need to describe Al-Azhar University. But when you say that they're coming in, they're buying farmlands, they're making a Sharia city.
Yes.
Define what that means.
So that's what I'm talking about with the Al-Azhar. So the Sharia city, meaning they follow Sharia law. They'll bring in, they have their own marriages, they have their own way to do funerals. They're following Sharia to the T. But the Al-Azhar University, all of these imams, they go there and they study some form of Sharia, whether it's Sharia jurisprudence, Sharia finance, etc. And that's who's being hired. So that way we know that these imams who are at these mosques know Sharia and that they're going to be adherent to it. And as we know, Al-Azhar University, what's it known for? Muslim Brotherhood ideology and having some of the top, leaders of Al-Qaeda graduate from it.
So wait a minute.
Where is it? Al-Azhar.
Al-Azhar's in Egypt, I think, right?
Cairo, Egypt.
Yeah. So, but they have these little Sharia towns. I come in. I decide I want to live there, or I want to visit, or I want to open a business. They're going to enforce Sharia law on me?
So
do they not still have city or state laws that are going to stop them?
We do have state laws. However, it's like a two-front battle. It's a two-front war. So what they say is, oh yeah, we'll welcome you to the community. But the thing is that when you build, so they've got shopping centers, they have their own gymnasiums, they have their own mosques, they're building their own houses. So when you go in there, everything that they have surrounding you follows Sharia and follows the Quran. There have been specific videos where they say, we don't have places where we can go to play with our friends. These are children, right? So we can't go play basketball with our friends.
Did you experience these in England?
That's the creation of an Islamic ghetto. They've come in and they just create it. The thing is, you don't need them to. They won't need Sharia courts to give out justice and to do all this because they all respect it. So once they've got the close-knit community, everyone within that community will respect it. Like in the UK now, the Muslim community don't ring the police. The police aren't called. They deal with their disputes themselves within the house, within their Sharia tribunals.
Is that what they're doing here in the States as well, Angela?
So, yes and no. They're kind of starting it. So they'll do disputes and stuff within their own communities. But what I've noticed is they do tend to work with the local police, not on like violence necessarily, but they'll hold like their Ramadan events and they'll advertise that they're friends with all of the police. So they do a handshake and a civilization jihad here.
Well, there's also civilization going on right here in California. Right now, I don't know if you're aware of this. There's a bill before the California Senate to make two Islamic holidays civil holidays, government holidays. Now, there's Hanukkah and Rosh Hashanah are not holidays in the state of California. Okay, other religions don't have holidays that are in the state of California. Whatever feast or fast day there might be in the Anglican Church. But there's a proposal right now to make two of them. Ironically, one of them is celebrating the end of Ramadan, which is a month of war. People who don't understand theology don't get it. That's actually, Muhammad started two different wars during the month of Ramadan. So I want to celebrate that. The other is a holiday that they're proposing here in California where I think it's 25 million livestock are sacrificed in Bangladesh every year for this holiday.
Yep.
It's a war holiday. I'm forgetting the name of it. That's what they're proposing here. So, did that happen in England? Do we start having official?
Well, we've seen everything change from now, even within the education. In the education system in the UK, every child from the age of 5 has to visit the mosque. So they take them to the mosque.
What's happening in America, Angela, in terms of these communities? Are they expanding from their little place in California and Texas, wherever they are, into other suburbs around the area to infiltrate in the same way that they did in England?
So there's no obligation to go to the mosque. What they're doing is interfaith movements. So they'll take children, whether it be from public school or a Christian school, sometimes even Jewish, and they'll bring them to the mosque as an interfaith to, quote unquote, show you how good Islam is and how welcoming they are. But really, it's a way to spread dawah and Islam itself, to kind of plant the seeds of Islam.
There was an interfaith event here in Los Angeles. It was being held at a temple, and the rabbi asked a Muslim cleric to come in and said, "What prayer would you like to do?" And he'd like to do the Allahu Akbar prayer. And I said, "You can't do that. There's plenty." He could have readings from Rumi. He could have all sorts of different texts if he wants. That's not interfaith. That's a one-way bridge. He's dedicating the land to Allah. He goes, "Well, but no one knows that's what it means." So, and that's what people recognize. That's what he wants to do, so we're going to respect him. I said, "Have a nice day. I won't be there."
Do you know I got invited? So when we set up the English Defence League, I got invited by the Bishop of Pontefract. His name was Tom Robinson, ironically. He invited me to, they contacted us to the meetings. So under the Queen, you have the Church of England, and you have the bishops. And he contacted us, said, "We want to set up a secret meeting between you, the leadership of the English Defence League, and the leaders of the Deobandi sect of Islam in Britain." Because and when we went there, we went to a church premises, and the bishop and the pastor there told us that MI5 and MI6 named these guys as the future leaders of Islam in Britain. Deobandi, that's what formed the Taliban, yeah, very conservative. And he said that and it was clear the air, so we certainly cleared the air and let them know why we're unhappy. But the bishop said, "We have interfaith days and we come together and we're working to bring the communities together." I said, "How are you doing that?" He said, "Well, we had a Christmas lunch together, so all the Muslim community come and joined us for our Christmas lunch." So I said, "Did you have wine?" And then he just looked. I said, "You didn't have wine, did you?" He goes, "No, we didn't." I said, You had a Sharia compliant Christmas lunch." I said, "You bent again." They don't bend. All of this is nonsense. This whole friendly, let's have pictures together, it's all nonsense, yeah? It's all a facade. So that's what I said to the bishop. I said, they won't bend, they won't budge, they won't move. You bend, you move, you bend, you change, they don't.
But look, when I'm invited to something, someone says, "Do we need to have a kosher lunch?" My answer is no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but that's
I'll either eat or I won't eat. It's Mike.
But then with Islam, they don't. It's not about them wanting you to them to live their way. They want you to live their way.
Okay, so then what's the challenge? And Angela, I know you have some questions for Tommy regarding this as well. This is a problem that you just discussed and that I just talked about in terms of interfaith. Religious leaders aren't doing what they need to do, are they? And I know, Angela, you wanted to address this with Tommy. You had a question about that as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if we want to talk about the most recent news and what's going on with Catholicism, Chrislam, and Islam and the Pope, I think he came out yesterday and said that we shouldn't be as fearful of Islam, and then went to the Algerian mosque and prayed towards Mecca there. You know, and then we have all of the American right-wing Catholics cheering this on, which just makes me think that they're ready to, submit to Islam when it fully comes here.
It's just weak. It's weak. Again, it's weak cowardice, and they don't understand what Islam is, and it's easy. By the way, it's easy to hate Israel. Yeah, it's easy. No one's going to kill you. No one's going to do nothing. Everyone's going to get loads of likes and loads of celebration on social media. It's easy to pretend that there's a Muslim-Christian alliance because now they get a lot of support online for that as well by, again, the anti-Jew movement. But who's the biggest advocate? Let me tell you this. because the accusation against Jews. Who's the biggest advocate for open borders in the world? I'll tell you who. It's the Pope. It's the Pope. Yeah? So if you want to talk about mass immigration, talk about open borders, does everyone blame the Catholics? I don't hear any accusations against the Catholics. I don't hear anyone going mad about mass immigration because of the Catholics. I just don't hear it. Look at what the Pope's doing now. It's embarrassing. It's humiliation. Again, I question. My mum's a devout Catholic, but that Pope is betraying Catholicism. He's betraying his own people. When he talks about, we need to see the good in Islam, what good? What good? Why does he talk up about the Christians being massacred in Nigeria? Why doesn't he do his job and stand up for Christianity and stand up for the values? And then when I saw him talking about, I put a comment underneath. It may be an immature comment, but I just put pussy. Yeah, pussy. Because under the Pope's comment, because I just thought, are you for real? Do you think the Crusades come around for being this weak? Do you think Christianity is still here today because of this weakness that you're? And the problem is,
I've never been to the Vatican, but isn't there a wall around it?
Yeah, that massive wall that's bigger than anywhere. Do you know why that wall was built? Stop the Muslims. So it's like, even when we look at it, it's like, look, with regards to Christianity through leadership of people like the Pope has become this laughing stock of weakness. And right now, what you're seeing a resurgence of, certainly in Great Britain, I know of, is a masculine Christianity. And Christianity is masculine. And Christianity wouldn't be still here if it wasn't masculine. It would have been defeated. It would have lost. All of the battles that Christians have won have all been spiritually led and religiously led to fight against evil. And what we're seeing now around the world is evil. And what we're seeing now from the Pope is total surrender.
So how do you really feel about the Pope?
Yeah. I'd like to say if it weren't on radio, I'd have said very clearly what I think about him. But it's total weakness, and Catholics need to wake up and realise Catholics are being butchered. But
it's all leadership. It's all religious leadership. It's not just the Pope. I can speak for rabbis the same way. I know too many pastors that
we held a Christmas celebration in the UK. The church come out and condemned us. It's like, we are your lost sheep, you morons.
Yeah, but the reality is, whereas clergy should be sheepdogs, too many are sheep.
Well, what's going to happen now is there's going to be a revival, and it's not going to happen in the church. It's going to happen on the streets.
Well, that's where the church starts.
Because according to the Pope, war is bad, and Algerian Muslims are great, even though in Algeria you can't proselytize Christianity. It's punishable with jail time and a million dinar, which is like 7,000.
We are at a time frame, so I'm going to interject here because we are at a hard break, and I have a question I ask everyone. Tommy Robinson, one word, one phrase that defines your soul, who you are. One word or one phrase that you leave for the world.
Resistance.
And resistance is not futile. It is powerful.
Fight.
It is important.
Yeah,
it is important to fight for the right things in every way, shape, and form. Angela, thank you as always for being here.
Rabbi, really fast, can I ask Tommy one more quick?
So Tommy, thank you so much for doing this, for being here, for sharing everything at the Rabbi's table. May you be safe and blessed on your journeys and back home. We say Hazaku Baruch, may you be strong, may you be blessed, and we'll continue in just a moment as well. Thank you for coming to the Rabbi's table.
Thank you.
If you like this podcast of the Rabbi's Table, I invite you to go to crntalk.com. There you'll be able to see all sorts of host shows, from food shows, entertainment shows, political shows. Go check out the podcast. Go check out the digital radio. That's crntalk.com. You're going to find great entertainment, great information. You'll find the Rabbi's Table there and a lot of other great surprises. We've been really blessed to have Tommy Robinson here at the Rabbi's Table, and seeing how really sensible in a lot of ways he is, and also how passionate he is. And one of the things that he demonstrates is courage. Courage literally meaning liqueur, to come from our heart. It is so important to understand what that really means. You know, part of the bumper music on the show is faith over fear. Every decision in life is a choice. It's either based in faith or it's based on fear. Every decision can be tagged to one of those two things. And here's the real secret. You cannot have both faith and fear in the same place at the same time. The more of one, the less of the other. The less of one, the more of the other. Every moment is a choice to have faith and not to worry, but to really have faith and act upon the right thing. And there's a story about this that comes from Persia. And since we were talking about Iran, it's appropriate. The chief rabbi in Persia had been told by the Sultan that he had 1 month and all the Jews were going to have to go into exile or they would be killed. He was terrified. He tried arguing with the Sultan. The Sultan had no comment. This is back in the Middle Ages. He said, you're going to be, in 30 days, you are gone or you are dead. He went back to his wife. He said, I'm scared. His wife said, you know you should always have fear. You know it's always to have faith. Excuse me. You should always have faith, always over fear, every single moment. And she said, trust me, I will take care of it. So he did. He had faith in his wife. 29 days later, she gives him 2 rugs. She tells him what to do. He goes back to the Sultan. The Sultan says, why are you talking to me? I have nothing to say to you. You're gone tomorrow or you're dead. The chief rabbi says, I have a gift for you. Again, this is on the words of wisdom, the advice from his wife. I have a gift for you, O great Sultan, before we are forced to leave Persia. And I have 2 rugs, and I want you to choose which one you most prefer. And so he rolls out 1 rug. It's a beautiful, solid burgundy silk rug. Gorgeous, but solid. He rolls out the other one. It's a multicolored Bukhara rug. All these fabulous fabrics and colors, and so intense. And the rabbi says, Sultan, which one do you want? Which rug is most appropriate that you want as a gift? And the Sultan says, I should kill you right now for insulting me. Obviously, I would want the multicolored rug. It's so diverse, it's so beautiful, as opposed to the singular rug. The rabbi says, let your ears hear what your words say. For in fact, you want to make Persia into 1 color. But the beauty of Persia is the many colors of this rug. And in the same way, the beauty of life is the diversity, the respect, and the wonder and magic that comes from respecting each other's colors, from creating a rainbow, from having faith, trust, and respect. Hazako Baruch. Thank you for being at the Rabbi's table. We'll see you next week. Shalom.